What's up, guys? Horrible angle, I know, I apologize. I can't find my other camera stand. Tonight we're gonna dive right into the earlier video. We showed you guys that Chevy pickup I got, and it didn't run, doesn't drive, doesn't move, gets pushed and moved around. And let's see if we can fix that. Haven't really played with it too much. Ultimately, we're gonna go along the resto mod. Gonna be doing an LS swap. Alright guys, so a little bit more torn down, but honestly we didn't do anything. None of the bolts were put in, so it was literally just sitting on top there. Lifted the intake manifold off. Said the heads are just loose on there. Took the valve covers off just to take a peek underneath. The rockers here, there's loose. And then look in here in the intake manifold, the push rods are gone. David happened to open the truck cab door, and look what we found.
We got him.
A bucket that's got not only all the push rods, unfortunately not labeled, so we're gonna guess and let her rip, tater chip.
Let her rip, tater chip.
But little baggies of bolts that are even flywheel pan bolts. Flywheelie. Shoot, that's what it's gonna do when we're done, boys, is fly wheelie.
Fly wheelies.
Fly wheelies. Alright guys, so we lifted the heads off of the truck. I got mine off like cakewalk. David struggled a little bit because he forgot to work out this morning.
I forgot to stretch.
You forgot to
This is the workout. Forgot to stretch before we did this.
That's right, safety industrial stretches. Anyway, with the heads off, we can take a peek at what we got to work with here. 305, 350 use the same block, just a different bore. Right, David? Right. That's what YouTube said anyway.
YouTube certified.
YouTube certified. I went to that school. As we suspected, I don't know if you guys can see or not there, but definitely was a blown head gasket. We got quite a bit of water that made its way past the heads there, coolant into the combustion chamber, and we got a lot of rust right there on that back cylinder. Actually, all of them have a little bit of rust on them. So we're gonna slap this engine together. We bought a headset from O'Reilly's for what, 42 bucks? 40 something bucks. We're gonna slap her all together, probably even fill the radiator with just water, because that's how we do, and start it and drive her till she blows up again, and at that point we're gonna pull her out and do that a full LS swap. So, like I said, this is the broke man repair, but definitely had it rebuilt once. Those aren't the stock pistons that are in that thing. Well, hopefully here. What do you think, Dave? Another 20 minutes, she'll be running.
Oh, dude, 10.
10 minutes. Yep. 10 minutes, she'll be running. Is that how it works?
That works.
Is that how it works? Yeah, I thought so. All right, guys. Well, we're gonna kind of clean things up here a little bit, but before we start assembling this thing, I don't know if you guys can tell, but we did wipe down the cylinder walls with some oil, kind of make it a little easier when it fires up. But one thing that we are gonna have to do to put the engine back together and get it running and set the ignition timing and whatnot is put the engine in what's called top dead center. And what that refers to is having this piston right here, which is your #1 cylinder, at the very top of its stroke. And that will happen 2 times in the crankshaft rotation, one on the compression stroke and one on the exhaust stroke. And we want to make sure it's on compression. So to do that, we're going to rotate the crank and watch these lifters right here. This first lifter is going to be your exhaust lifter that's going to push the exhaust push rod and open the exhaust valve. And then this one right here is going to be intake. So we're going to watch and see which one moves. And what we want is this one, or the piston, to be up at the very top of the cylinder wall. Or as you can see, like these other ones are not. Some of them are close, but we're going to want this one at the very top of the piston, or at the top of the bore of the engine block, so almost flush with the deck. And this one to have opened and then drop back to close, or moved up and then back down. And right when the point where this one closes and this is at the top is when we're at top dead center, and that's where it's going to have to be to put the distributor in to get it running. Okay guys, so what I mean is we're looking at the #1 cylinder again, so #1 piston. number one exhaust and number one intake lifters. So as I rotate the crankshaft, oh, let me get my arm down there. So see how our exhaust lifter is sticking up now? And then I keep going. Now see how the intake lifter is starting to come up? There we are. So now our piston is at the very top of its stroke. The intake lifter has just closed, and now we're at the compression stroke. And the engine is in top dead center. Now we're gonna go grab some gaskets and start putting her together. Alright guys, we stepped inside here real quick just so you could see a little bit better, but we got our gasket kit from O'Reilly's. So there's our part number right there, HS7733 P2. We're gonna take a look what's inside. There the kit is opened up. You see all the gaskets there. Pretty much everything you need from the top end of the engine. Actually, it is everything we need from the top end of the engine. From air filter seals to intake gaskets, all around the intake manifold, to our coolant gaskets for the water pump, valve cover gaskets, exhaust manifold gaskets, and then the culprits for that engine failure, these head gaskets here. So we're going to go slap them in and start bolting everything back together, and hopefully cross our fingers she runs. If she does, great. If not, gasket set only cost us 40 bucks. Alright guys, so here we are sitting back at the engine. Got the gasket set open and sitting out. Now, gaskets we're using are Felpro gaskets. MLS stands for multi-layer steel. Now these guys we're going to just sit right on the engine. We have some little holes right there that are going to line up with our little alignment pin. One right there, and then one right back there in the back of the engine. Some head gaskets are stamped which side goes up, and in that case you want to make sure to have the correct side up, or you might have some sealing issues. A lot of MLS Felpro head gaskets aren't stamped that way, and if there's no stamp on which way is up or which head gaskets is left and which one's the right, then as long as you have it oriented correctly and sitting on the mating surface correctly, it doesn't matter which side you face up. So we're going to set those on and then we'll show you what that looks like. Alright guys, so that's what they look like just sitting on there. As we come in, you can see that we snapped them onto the little retaining pins there on all sides. There's 2 pins, one on either side. And then you kind of want to look to make sure all the holes are lined up. So you're going to look at all your bolt holes, make sure the cylinders are actually lined flush with the gasket, make sure that all of the actual ports and passages are open and nothing's blocked by the gasket. So those ones look good. Whoa. When working at night, be cautious not to fall off your stool. Now we got those gaskets on, we're going to set the heads back on and show what that looks like here in a second. Alright guys, so we got those heads set back on. One thing you really want to be careful of is just set the head straight down onto the studs. You don't want to be sliding them around too much on those head gaskets. Run the risk of damaging one of those gaskets. So pick the head up, move over, drop it straight down onto the studs, and it should slip on pretty easily. Next thing we're going to do is see if we can't go through that whole bucket of bolts and find all the head bolts and oil them up real good on the threads and put them in and torque them down. Alright guys, so that bucket that we found, actually David found earlier with all the bolts, was our head bolts, so we lucked out. Now when you're taking a small block Chevy apart, you're going to have quite a few different head bolts. There's going to be 7 of the longer bolts, this one right here, that run down the center of the head, and then there's going to be 2 of these shorter bolts, one that goes on either end of the head, and you're going to have that on both sides. So total you're going to have 14 long ones and 4 shorter ones, and then some really short ones around the outside that secure the head to the block. But when we look in here, so these holes here at the end of the heads is going to be where our short bolts are going to go. You got one here, and then one down at the end on that side, and then these holes right in here. I can't really see them all that well. See if I can move the rockers. So right in here, there, those are going to be the long ones. Good rule of thumb is to make sure to take your bolt and lube the threads with some oil. It's going to help in the installation process, as well as follow the proper torque sequence. You're going to go by the factory torque specs, and a lot of the times you'll use head bolts that are torqued to yield, so the threads are going to stretch, so you're going to have to go through and torque them twice. But we're going to put those bolts in and get them torqued down, and then we'll... Hey guys, side note, look how dark it is outside. This is what we're working in, right at the front of the garage, so I apologize for the video quality. I want to just give a real quick shout out to my cameraman. You look good sitting right inside the hood of the truck, bud.
I know.